thank you for sitting down and joining me for Quarantined Historians Drinking Coffee.
My schedule is really open these days.
Are you, in fact, drinking coffee right now?
Yes, in my Joel Lane mug.
Perfect. I picked a mug specifically for you. It is my City of Raleigh mug. It's also
I feel like I should put a zoom background of the cityscape.
I know. It's got random stats on it that are way out of date now. Actually, what I love about this mug is it is so old. It doesn't have the PNC building on it.
Ooh, that's vintage. Maybe we should put it in our collection.
When I'm done with it, I will donate it to the City of Raleigh Museum. It's really just a time to get together. A lot of historians at home, working from home. And so the Vance Birthplace and the Mountain History and Culture Group thought it would be fun just to kind of talk to people, see what they're doing, talk a little bit about interpretation and about what we do. So I thought we would actually start with you talking a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get into the field?
Oh, how did I get into this? By mistake. So I did my undergrad at UNCG started out as an art major and discovered history my junior year and graduated with a double major. Kind of bounced around, did a lot of things in the graphic design world, and stumbled into being the director of the Orange County Historical Museum in 2001. And that kind of inspired me to go back to grad school. So I finished up at State in 2006 and learned that museums were places where art and history cross. So that's where I realized what I wanted to be when I grew up. So here I am.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I've actually had other people say that, like it happened by accident. Yeah. I've also been surprised at how many people end up in the museum and history field that also have some kind of art connection or background. So many people I talk to, like for me, my original major was music education.
Ooh.
So many people I talk to do music or some form of art or theater, and then there's just this overlap. So I find that kind of interesting.
It is, we are cultural merchants in the museum field. So anybody who appreciates the value of culture, it's sort of a natural transition, I guess. That we understand the value of culture and what it means and really want to share it with the world. So history being a part of that, I think it's just a natural, something that we creative people who appreciate the arts and culture just have in our bones.
That was really deep. Sorry. That was so deep for quarantined historians drinking coffee. I actually feel like that's really telling because this is like what we do on a daily basis. Like I'll be like normal, making dinner or just out with friends. And inevitably, I swear, someone's like, so like, how's the Vance Birthplace? And then it turns into an hour-long conversation about, the history of race and politics and how that relates to today and race relations or, stuff like that. And people are like, wow, that was deep. We were just eating dinner.
But we are educators at our very heart, right? So when you do that, we flip into educator mode.
We do. It happened at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, God forbid somebody should talk to me at the grocery line. So what do you do? Well, let me tell you.
You have a background. You do have a background working with state historic sites. Now, have you only worked with state historic sites through boards, or have you worked with state historic sites before in like some kind of volunteer paid capacity or anything like that?
Yeah, so my first job out of college was a part-time tour guide at Bennett Place. So I was out there for like 10 years on and off doing part-time staff. When I went to grad school in Charleston for the first time, first tried grad school, I worked at a lot of historic parks around Charleston. So the USS Yorktown, Charlestown Landing, 1670, Middleton Plantation. So I did a lot more historic sites, a rotation down there. But yeah, Bennett Place is the only one where I've actually worked been employed here. Yeah, and most of my other experience through historic sites have been through the board, the nonprofit boards that most of the historic sites have. Like Stagville, I was out there for a while.
Yeah, we overlapped briefly.
Oh, Stagville.
Yeah.
Special place.
It is. All of our historic sites are so special.
In different ways.
What I find is people either really love Vance and then don't come to the site because we're talking about slavery, or they really hate Vance and don't come to the site because they think we're not talking about slavery.
Yeah. It is an incredibly weird time to be in this field. As historians, this is a moment when the past truly collides with the present. And I think from a lot of stuff from, when I was in grad school, we learned about these controversial times and exhibits and stuff, but nothing prepared us how to handle such controversy and such a polarizing time that, we are trying to navigate this as a field as best as possible when so much of society is learning about history outside of us. Mm-hmm. The internet is taken over as the teacher of history. And as we know, everything on the internet is so true. So
like this, right now.
Yeah. So what we see is so many people learning history outside of vetted places like historic sites and museums, that they are getting this history. And a lot of it is wrong, or it's very slanted, or it's, just absolutely incorrect. So they're projecting a lot of this on what we do. Mm-hmm. And so it is truly anew, because I think there's so much going on in society and national politics that is shaping how we encounter the past through the lens of society today. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard because, we've always been taught museums are neutral, right? They're neutral places. They have these conversations, that kind of stuff. But, there's a shift for museums not to be neutral anymore. So we are mm-hmm. kind of caught up in this push and pull. And certainly, we work for governmental entities. And so we are in a tight place where we have to walk a tightrope of trying to, between these two groups. Nonprofits and private historic sites can truly take this non-neutral stance, but we're kind of limited in what we can do. So
it's funny you bring up neutral. I actually used that in an email this morning and said, museums and historic sites, we're not a neutral space. Like, we are a space where you should be able to come have conversation, mm-hmm. but not necessarily a neutral space. And that has definitely changed a lot, because I feel like when I started in the field, it was very much like your opinion shouldn't be in it. It should be fully objective. It shouldn't matter. And now it's like, well, have we ever really been able to do that? Yeah. No.
It's very idealized.
Right. Yeah. It's never like we thought we were doing it, but that's never really even been the case. Do you have any exhibits that people have specifically had issues with or pushed back on? Was it the bluegrass exhibit I did?
The pushback. Oh. I don't know. I think, you see a lot of people, I hear that a lot, that people if that there is this limited amount of history. And again, I think you're right. If we talk about these people, we lose talking about these people. And I think society there's folks in society who are very scared about since this narrative, this inclusive narrative is changing, that more proportion of their stories being left out of that narrative. And I think that's what's causing some of that, And of course, coming out of the 1960s with social history, that this kind of rainbow of stories that need to be told, that, again, you have to, the expectation is that you're going to have to tell all of these stories at one time in an exhibit, which is impossible to do. And it is people trying to claim a piece of the pie. Other people feel like it's exclusion to their piece of the pie, and museums can only tell one piece of the pie. So it's a juggling act that I think we will never get right,
No.
but it's an attempt that we always try to do. But there's so many expectations from the public that we can do our best, and that's all we can do.
So can you talk a little bit about the exhibit development process? Like, I'm not a lot of detail, but I'm more thinking of like an exhibit's opening in 24 hours and we're all running around screaming, hammering stuff.
Yeah.
And then
So
the first 10 minutes in, a visitor walks in and is like, "You're missing a comma," and you're like,
yeah.
"Oh!"
Well, I have a deadline today. We're doing an exhibit on the 19th Amendment.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's doing the 19th Amendment,
Yes.
but we, of course, want to do the then, now, next, which is sort of the mantra of the museum. But
Right.
so we're looking at the 19th Amendment. We're also looking at the entire century afterward about women's engagement in politics. And so, we had some of our part-time folks working on it, but trying to utilize part-time staff to do full-time work never works out. So I've kind of got stuck writing this century narrative, and it's driving me crazy. So it is. The exhibit preparation is a long process, and I don't think a lot of people understand what goes into it. There's a lot of the research that goes into it. You have to approach it from design aesthetics. There's such a language on height, font size, colors, how to make it readable to people with disabilities. How do you make it accessible for ADA compliancy? So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Then there's permissions for images, photographs, and stuff. So it is a very hectic process.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. And of course, the timelines never get on right. So yes, I think we both opened exhibits where the paint is still wet and the glue is still drying on the wall. But it's in a sick sort of way, that kind of adrenaline rush is what we live for in the museum field. I mean, we deal through archives and historical research, which is slow prodding. So the only time we get excitement in our job is exhibit time. So it is the thrill of seeing all of this research kind of come together in this one big, bold opening moment with so many people putting so much hard work into it. It's just this kind of a thrill to see it done. And sometimes there's a lot of terror involved in that thrill, but it's again, it's what we do for the community. It's our job. So
yeah, I still have the picture of me cutting the ribbon for the People's Politics exhibit. That was a good day.
and that's still cranking away. And
that exhibit, we started research. That one took 2 years.
Yeah.
I also still have, and it's at my office, otherwise I'd show it to you right now, but I took with me when you came to me and you said, all right, I think you said, we have this space, to the right in the museum. I don't remember the measurement.
You still got Stonehenge?
Oh, I still have Stonehenge. You were like, there's this space and we need ideas, so go. And I was like, ooh, and I left and I came back with like 4 different ideas for you. And then I think you liked the People's Politics one, and so I was like, all right, let me do a little more. And then I built that paper display. Stonehenge. So, I still have it. And it's got like stick figures of how they would stand at the exhibit. And I kept it because it's just, it's close to my heart.
It is. I mean, it's a practical tool. How we talked about this creative people and the arts. This is where the history and arts kind of meld. Stick figures and Stonehenge.
No, the public's not going to know what I mean by Stonehenge right now. So what I'm going to do when we advertise this particular interview, I'm going to advertise it with a picture of my exhibit mock-up made with construction paper and crayons and tape. One thing that I kind of miss about museums, honestly, is that the content changes. You're constantly, I feel like the difference is I never felt like I became really the expert on a topic, but I was constantly learning more information, from like doing the bluegrass exhibit to the People's Politics, the local government, to beyond Bollywood. So learning about Indian culture to World War II, it was like there was constant changing and learning. Whereas, with historic sites, it's like the story doesn't really change. It's always the Vance Birthplace, but you end up becoming so well versed in it that I could, roll into a whole spiel about Vance, in my sleep.
Museums offer, like you said, a great opportunity to be exposed to vastly different topics. They're constantly changing. So, in Raleigh, we've got, over 200 and plus years of history to kind of delve into. These historic sites are just tiny slices, but like you said, you can go really deep on those slices.
Yeah.
And you have an opportunity to kind of slice them up on a very finite level. Whereas museums, we are just painting with broad strokes often. Yeah. Because, this entire 19th Amendment exhibit, for an entire century of women's engagement in politics, I have like 3,000 words,
wow.
like 400 square feet. So it is truly a different balance on how how interpretation is played out in both of our sites. So I think for folks who are thinking about getting into the field, that's something to kind of think about, the different flavors of historic interpretation that you want to get into.
So what are some of your favorite questions that you have gotten from the public?
Favorite questions? Let me see.
It could be like just interactions, things that have happened. It doesn't have to be at the museum. It could be anywhere.
The civil rights exhibit was always very interesting. And, you were there for the civil rights exhibit. We finally took it down.
Oh, did the doors come down?
Yeah.
Wow.
So but what you're talking about, we had a segregated bathroom doors that said the colored restroom doors and white restroom doors. And that exhibit was very powerful for those, because it was always very interesting to see people react to those, because as soon as you walk into the main gallery were these segregated doors. You had both white and African-American people who saw those and said, nope, turned around and left.
Yep.
I was very shocked to see a lot of people traveling from the north, especially older folks who would come down and see those and said, oh, thank you so much for talking about this history. Like the South was a very monolithic place that was still kind of sweeping this under the floor. So that was a strange interaction in it. But that exhibit provoked a lot of conversations and a lot of reactions in such powerful ways that we decided to take it down. We're going to turn it into a traveling exhibit because of its influence, and it still reverberates today on some of the same issues. One of the most successful exhibits we've got now is the Dwayne Powell exhibit. And Dwayne Powell was a political cartoonist in Raleigh. And I really thought I was going to get fired for that exhibit because Dwayne Powell. Yeah, because.
I see.
Yeah, because he's a very liberal cartoonist. And I even put up a sign in the exhibit saying, hey, please don't yell at my staff. Don't yell at me. Please don't.
I didn't draw the political cartoon.
Yeah, so how we try to diffuse that is that we talked about the history of political cartoonists in America. Mm-hmm. We talked about Dwayne's personal philosophy on political cartoons. And we said, we're not saying we don't endorse what he's saying, but these are a retrospective of this profession that was around even with the formation of the United States.
Right.
This is what he does. And the most successful part of that was our dry erase wall in the back where people could leave their comments and draw their own cartoons. That has been incredibly successful. We have people who come in and spend hours sitting in that thing drawing and just expressing themselves. And who gets to draw on a wall in a museum, right? So it's been very popular for us. So that kind of interaction was surprisingly successful that we had no idea that would be such an engaging part of the exhibit.
I love how that one turned out. We were starting on that right when I left to go to Vance because I was in a few meetings with Dwayne. He was so nice and interesting, and that exhibit turned out great. It looked really great, and his drawing on the wall is beautiful. Is that still there?
It still is, but that's the crazy thing. Dwayne died in April, and so we've got this original artwork of his, like a mural on the wall. So can we preserve it?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought about that when I saw that he had passed away. I was like, oh, I want to take that wall and just
Save
leave
it
it.
some. So
I
I don't
wonder
know.
if there's something you could like put over it almost to preserve that so that you could change it, but that it's kind of always there. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's about the best thing I think we can do.
Yeah.
History is
Yeah.
being so skewed that now more than ever we need historic sites and museums to try to get in there and to navigate this off the wall discussion and really
Mhm.
to use what we do to teach. And that's one of the things that, sometimes in government entities, again, we talked about this tightrope that we really can't get out and do what we need to do. When Charlottesville came, so 2 years ago,
That was
there,
2017.
yeah, 3 years ago, right?
Hmm.
That the city was very very apprehensive about talking about any of Confederate imagery, Confederate monuments, any of this that's going on, because it's such a hot topic, a
Hmm.
divisive topic, and controversial topic that I felt like a real opportunity to have this conversation with the community to educate was missed. And this is I hate to say it, but this is what we've been preparing for all of our careers at the
Yeah.
moment when we are really needed in society to sort of broker, to interpret the past at a critical moment where we need it the most. That we kind of missed the call into the game. So
Mm.
I think as we go forward, museums and historic sites really need to push ourselves to 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 explain to people, to go out of our way to explain what's going on when history sort of rears its ugly head, and to be that place and those people who try to explain what's going on and to give people a true vetted story as best we can to
Hmm.
help people understand, which we don't really can't get out and do so much.
Yeah. Um, yeah, when Charlottesville happened, it was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks before I had been planning for a year with UNC Asheville to do a symposium on Zebulon Vance's legacy. It was literally going to examine and reconsider his legacy or lack thereof, and basically debate, have an open forum discussion, speakers kind of thing. Our keynote was David Blight,
Nice.
and
Yeah, I think I remember.
he was talking about Civil War memory and all these things, and that happened like 3 or 4 weeks before. And the stress level and what we were doing, I was trying to do this thing to create this safe space where people could come together and talk, and the tension was just like through the roof.
Yeah.
And to a point where we actually had to move the location of the symposium. It was supposed to be in a room that could hold like 100, 150 on UNCA's campus, and we had to move it to Lipinski Auditorium, and ended up for our keynote. I think we had like almost 400 people in the
Wow.
room, which is
That's awesome.
wonderful.
No,
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm not complaining, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I get up and talk in front of people all the time for a living. And I remember walking on the stage of the auditorium, and I was getting ready to, like, David Blight's there, and which is, like, for a historian and someone who works in a Civil War, talking about Civil War history, I was like, David Blight. But I was so nervous. I was shaking on the stage, like shaking, just about I think the complexities of it, like, hit me, just how heavy it all really was. But
Yeah, I mean, I can understand, but I think the great thing is you guys went ahead and did it,
yeah.
and that's the awesome part of that story.
Um, so I have often I think about the City Museum a lot. I One of my favorite programs was Night at the Museum.
My personal mantra is that if you hire a person, you hire them because of their talents, you hire them because their abilities and their motivation. So I've always believed that if you hire good people, they have good ideas and they can complete these ideas. So I much prefer to have somebody who's motivated and talented that can do these programs. So it it's a rewarding part of your job to see something you developed and implemented and done and successful. So, that's sort of the artist in me to say, hey, when you started on an artwork, you paint it, you work with it, you mold it, and when it comes out, you're proud of it. And it's the same way with programs and exhibits. This is sort of the rewarding part of our jobs. And so, that night at the museum program was wonderful. Kids loved it. It was such a great program. So, and again, you talked about people's politics, where you're able to sort of take your Stonehenge idea, develop it, work it out, and cutting the ribbon on it. It is wildly satisfying for us to see that done and to feel that. So, I enjoy it, and I try to instill that in the staff to say, hey, I will give you all the assets you need to make it happen. It's just on you to do it. So,
did you still feel that way when I got in the squirrel costume?
The squirrel costume is awesome. We don't use a squirrel costume enough, but
when I just remember ordering it through the city's online thing, and it had to be approved by you, then Troy, then higher ups in Parks and Rec, and I think it was Scott Payne who said, he was like, that was one of my most favorite orders that came through that he had to approve. He's like, a squirrel costume. My favorite moment was when it came in, and I'm in my office.
You wore it downtown.
And then I put it on. Well, I got the text message from one of the part-time staff at the front desk, and all it was a squirrel head. And I immediately was like, oh my God. And I ran upstairs, immediately put it on. And I knew that you were coming up the elevator from some meeting. I don't remember what it was. You were on the elevator with someone, and I was like, and then we wore it. Well, I wore it over to the municipal building. You came with me carrying my head.
Yeah, because I wanted to see what people thought of it, and it was a scream.
Do you remember when I went into the bathroom to get situated, and I walked by some little kids and they followed me?
Yes.
They were like, oh.
It's magical. But again, it's stuff like that just is what we do to amuse ourselves and to interpret history in new and exciting ways.
Yeah, I mean, it worked. I got the job done. Oh my God.
Because we were both talking from our homes during a pandemic outbreak. How is this going to reshape the field? One of the things, because you're doing this, we're doing the same thing, is that I think this is going to force historic sites to utilize the internet more in interpretation. We are both creating content. And before this, some big museums, some very progressive historic sites had the wherewithal to push more content online. But now everybody's doing this. So I really think this is going to force us to revolutionize how we deliver content. I think this is going to be from now on, we're going to see this continuing on and mature as we do programs like you're doing, and as we kind of try to figure out how we reach new audiences that we've never really embraced the internet as a delivery system.
Right.
And we put up our artifacts online, and we put up pictures of events and stuff. But I think this is going to jumpstart an entire new revolution in the public history field, I think.
I think it's going to also take, as if you're working for a government entity, every month we have to report how many people come to our site. And based on our numbers, it largely dictates, the kind of funding that we can get. Virtual visitors being counted as visitors, and engagement. So that I think is going to change, because right now I keep track of those numbers, but it's not counted in our site's annual visitation in the same way. And I think that it's going to need to be at some point. And I do think it is the silver lining, honestly, of all of this, is that it is adding another platform for interpretation. Just weren't really using it that much. It was falling to the back burner, and it falls to the back burner because, again, like I said, we are judged by the people who come to the site. And I don't think there is something about being in a museum and at a site. So I think there is some concern that, well, if we keep doing this, is it going to hurt sites? Is it going to hurt museums? Or are people going to stop coming? And I just don't think that that's true. I think that this is just going to be an additional platform and an additional way to interpret and get information out there. You know, how are we going to decide what is best to be done at the museum, online, versus like both? You know, what does that look like? And some of that I think will work itself out because the audiences are going to tell us.
So, I mean, pushing as much stuff as you can online is really going to hopefully create some familiarity and some understanding of sites and museums that when it does pass, people will want to come and visit. So I think it's really going to help us drive traffic and increase our visibility in the community. So, and I think it's been needed for a while.
Yeah.
That, you know, we as historians, we always look backwards, not always forward.
Yeah.
So this is kind of forcing us to use that and look forward and say, hey, this is a great opportunity for us. Again, silver lining.
Yeah, we've been trying to create some consistency just because it is a chaotic time, and I think people are feeling stressed. And so we didn't want to just like throw a million things at them at once. And so we've been like trying to keep it steady weekly, where we release one video that's called Learning with Lauren. So she's our assistant site manager.
I saw one of those.
Yeah, so she does a video, and then usually I do a crafting with Kimberly, and there's a craft that relates to the lesson.
That alliteration.
You know, you've worked with me behind the scenes right now. A new, I've wanted to work on for a while, a kid mascot specifically for Vance. Shocking, I know. So you can get ready for the debut in a few weeks of Peaches the pig.
I know how much fun it is to create the entire backstory of your mascot. So.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's what I've been. That's what I'm working on right now. It's going to relate to the Buncombe Turnpike, and Peach's ancestors, you know, traveled through on the Buncombe Turnpike and just loved it so much here they stayed. And I don't know where this stuff comes from.
Are you going to get a pig suit?
So I've thought about that. I don't know. I don't know. I think it might. I was thinking about like a hand puppet. I've been looking at hand puppets online, so I think I'm going to get a pig hand puppet. I haven't figured out the voice yet, though. Like, what does a pig talk like? He's just a pig. Like, what is? I don't know.
Things they don't teach you in grad school.
I thought about in interviews being like, here is a toilet paper roll, some Legos, some tape, and a crayon. What can you create? That also relates to history.
Yeah, you know, that's the ultimate test of a great educator.
It actually made me think when you brought up the question about technology and using the internet. You asked me a question when I interviewed for my job at the City of Raleigh Museum that I still remember because I didn't know how to answer it. But you asked me how I would use technology in interpretation and education programs. And I was like, oh. And I was like, you know, I don't know. I really, like at that time, that just wasn't part of what that's been like almost 8 years ago now that we had that interview. And so, you know, it's interesting that you were ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Winning.
So yeah, my staff is so over me talking about virtual and augmented reality. It's like,
I'm not surprised.
This talk again. So, but yeah, it's there's so much wonderful technology out there for us to use. But again, historians, we're looking backwards, and so. And you know, that's the cool thing about the City of Raleigh Museum, this whole then, now, next mantra we've got. It forces us to kind of look at history for history's sake and then bring it to the present. But then how do we use the past to shape the future? And that gives us, you know, a really relevancy that a lot of museums and historic sites I don't think really think about that much. But as all these places, you know, visitorship decreases, house museums close every day, how do you be relevant and make people want to come and visit you and want to learn? So you kind of have to keep up with the times. Tell them about the old times.
You are now a part of history. So, but anyway.
Deep.
What?
That's so deep.
I know. We started that way. We're going to end that way. It feels right. Anyway, well, thanks again, and we'll do it again in a few months.
Yeah, we're still locked in our houses. I hope.
Yeah. If not, we'll do it. We'll do it again, and then you can do it from the museum, and I can do it from the site.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll keep this going. So, anyway,
Cool.
all right. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.